Marissa Hale is 45 years old, living in a quiet suburban town on the edge of New Jersey. She works as a part-time cleaner, moving from house to house with a calm smile and a gentle, almost fragile presence. Her days are simple, built around routines she rarely changes, and most people see her as a quiet woman who keeps to herself. She currently lives with her son, Andrew, who is 23, and his wife, Lana, a woman whose cold politeness always makes the house feel slightly tense. On the surface, Marissa's life seems peaceful, almost uneventful, as if she has finally reached a stretch of calm after years of trying to survive. But behind her soft eyes lies a story she has never been able to escape. 15 years ago, her infant daughter disappeared, leaving a wound that never healed. And though the world believes she has moved on, Marissa knows the storm has only been sleeping. Marissa's days began early, long before the sun touched the roofs of the quiet neighborhood, and she slipped into her familiar routine with practiced calm. She cleaned the kitchen, prepared breakfast, and made sure Andrew had everything he needed before leaving for work. She tried to help Lana whenever possible, offering small gestures of kindness, but Lana responded with distant politeness that felt like a closed door. Marissa pretended not to notice, choosing peace over confrontation because she believed harmony was something you built quietly, not demanded. Andrew loved his mother deeply, yet he was gentle to a fault, and his silence became the bridge he walked on whenever tension rose between the two women. Marissa never blamed him, knowing life had already asked too much from him after the loss of his father. After work, she would scrub counters, fold laundry, and hum old melodies that once soothed her children when they were small. She moved through the house like a careful breeze, rearranging pillows, reheating dinner, and softening the edges of the family's strained interactions. But the evenings belonged entirely to her, and that was when the quiet grew heavy. She would sit by the window with a cup of warm tea, holding the tiny bracelet engraved with the name of her missing daughter. Memories returned in fragments, like torn pieces of paper floating through her mind, and she reread the few notes she had saved from those desperate early days of searching. 15 years had passed, yet the hope inside her had not died, it had only curled into something small and fragile, living inside her like a dim light. Marissa believed that if she held on long enough, life would someday return what it had stolen. Everything felt steady on the surface, almost peaceful, as if time had finally softened her wounds. But this calm was only a thin layer, and beneath it, the first cracks had already begun to form. The evening began quietly, with the soft ticking of the kitchen clock filling the silence, but tension had already been simmering beneath the surface. Lana suddenly confronted Marissa, accusing her of interfering too much in our family life, her voice sharp enough to cut through the calm. Marissa froze for a moment, startled by the hostility, and tried to explain that she only wanted to help, not intrude. Lana brushed that aside, claiming that Marissa's presence made her feel suffocated, as if the house wasn't big enough for all three of them. Andrew stood between them, trapped in the middle, and his eyes darted nervously from his wife to his mother. He didn't raise his voice, didn't defend anyone, and his silence fell heavier than any argument could have. For Marissa, that silence said everything she had feared but never admitted out loud. She felt the invisible wall closing in, reminding her that she no longer truly belonged in this home she had tried so hard to nurture. The argument escalated as Lana listed every small frustration she had kept inside, turning them into sharp accusations. She implied that Marissa was holding on to the past too tightly, that she was emotionally exhausting, and that the house needed space to grow without old shadows lingering. Every word struck a tender bruise inside Marissa, stirring memories she had tried to bury deep under years of routine. The pain from losing her husband returned first, swift and brutal, like a reopened wound she never fully healed. Then came the memory she feared most, the night she returned from a double shift to find her baby girl gone. Her former in-laws had taken 5-month-old Callie and signed the adoption papers, telling her that the child deserved a better family, while she was left screaming in disbelief. She remembered begging for answers, running from office to office, pleading with anyone who would listen, but the trail had gone cold before she could grasp it. For 15 long years, that loss sat in her chest like a stone, heavy but impossible to put down. Standing in front of Lana now, the same helplessness rushed back with full force, making her feel small and powerless in her own life once again. The house suddenly felt unfamiliar, like a place she was only visiting instead of a place she was meant to stay. The argument reached its breaking point when Lana crossed her arms and said coldly that it was time for Marissa to leave the house. Andrew said nothing, unable to choose between his mother and his wife, and his silence hung in the air like a verdict. Marissa nodded slowly, holding back tears, and walked to her room to gather her few belongings. She packed a small bag, slipped the tiny bracelet engraved Callie into her pocket, and stepped out into the night as rain began to fall in steady sheets. With each step down the driveway, the weight of 15 years pushed against her shoulders, but there was no turning back now. This was her first fracture, the moment her life split open and forced her onto a path she never wanted yet couldn't avoid. Marissa sat alone at the midnight bus stop, her clothes damp from the rain and her spirit feeling utterly abandoned. She wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to hold together the pieces of her life that had just shattered. The street was empty except for the occasional passing car, and the quiet made her loneliness feel even heavier. Lights flickered weakly from a distant store, but nothing in the world felt warm or welcoming at that moment. As she stared at the wet pavement, a man approached slowly, careful not to startle her. He was around 50, with gentle eyes and a calm presence that seemed to cut through the cold air. He introduced himself as Victor Rowan and asked if she was all right, speaking in a soft tone that didn't demand anything from her. Marissa tried to answer, but her voice hitched, and she could only nod weakly. Victor noticed her trembling hands and sat nearby, leaving enough space so she didn't feel pressured. He asked small, simple questions, offering conversation without prying too deeply into her pain. It was the kindness in his voice that finally cracked something open inside her, releasing the emotions she had been holding back. Tears streamed down her face, and she apologized even though she had no reason to. Victor told her it was okay, reminding her that sometimes people simply needed someone to sit beside them in the dark. His calmness made her feel less invisible, and for the first time that night, she didn't feel completely alone. He asked if she had somewhere safe to go, and when she hesitated, he understood her answer without needing any explanation. She felt exposed and vulnerable, yet strangely accepted in a way she hadn't experienced for years. Victor offered to help her find a temporary place to stay, speaking carefully so she wouldn't feel pitied. He mentioned he lived in a modest house with his 15-year-old adopted daughter, Serena Rowan, and that they could use someone to help with cleaning. His offer was practical rather than emotional, but it carried the weight of genuine goodwill that Marissa was desperate for. After everything she had endured, being treated with simple respect felt like a lifeline. Still, her heart remained fractured, heavy with the fresh wound of losing her home and the deeper, older scars that never healed. The betrayal from those she trusted most left her questioning her own worth, even as a stranger extended kindness toward her. The bus that she had been waiting for passed by without stopping, but she didn't care anymore because her night had taken a different direction. Victor stood and gently encouraged her to come with him, assuring her she didn't have to make any decisions alone. Marissa rose slowly, feeling both fragile and strangely lighter, as if someone had lifted part of the burden from her shoulders. She followed Victor through the quiet streets, unsure of where this path would lead but too tired to resist the kindness offered to her. When they reached his house, the porch light glowed warmly against the darkness, a stark contrast to the coldness she had escaped. Marissa stepped inside hesitantly, unaware that this seemingly simple act was the beginning of a fate she never saw coming. Marissa slowly adjusted to her new life in Victor's house, moving through the rooms with quiet steps and careful breaths. She appreciated the gentleness of the environment, yet her heart still felt like a hollow echo of everything she had lost. Even though Victor treated her with respect and Serena greeted her warmly each morning, an emptiness lingered inside her. She often wondered where she had gone wrong and why her life had been filled with so many painful twists. At night, when the house settled into silence, Marissa would sit by the small bedroom window and let her thoughts unravel. Memories of her missing daughter came rushing back, and the unresolved ache twisted deeper with every recollection. She thought of Andrew too, hoping he was safe even though he had chosen silence over defending her. The loneliness of that realization stung, reminding her how easily love could crumble under pressure. In these quiet moments, she recognized a difficult truth: her life had never known a complete happiness. She had always been surviving instead of living, always holding her breath instead of being allowed to simply exist. But as the days passed, she began noticing something unfamiliar within herself, something she hadn't felt in years. There was strength buried beneath all the sorrow, a quiet resilience that had carried her through every heartbreak. Serena, bright and curious, often came to the kitchen to talk with her about simple things like recipes or chores. Each time the girl smiled or asked for advice, a soft warmth spread through Marissa's chest. These small interactions chipped away at the walls she had built, reminding her that connection didn't have to hurt. She found comfort in the rhythm of daily tasks, the gentle hum of a household that never raised its voice at her. Victor occasionally checked in, making sure she wasn't overworking herself, his calm presence grounding her more than he realized. His kindness wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was steady, and that steadiness made her feel seen. Little by little, a thin thread of hope began weaving itself into her days, delicate but undeniable. She still carried scars, still felt the weight of everything she had lost, yet something inside her whispered that her story wasn't finished. For the first time in a long while, Marissa allowed herself to believe that maybe life still held something meaningful for her. She didn't know what it was yet, but she sensed it waiting quietly just beyond the horizon. Marissa found herself becoming closer to Victor and Serena with every passing week, drawn in by their gentle routines and quiet warmth. The house that once felt foreign slowly began to feel like a place where she could breathe again. One afternoon, while she was cleaning Serena's room, her hand brushed over a framed photograph on the shelf. It was Serena as a baby, smiling with a bright innocence, and around her tiny wrist was a bracelet identical to the one belonging to Callie. Marissa froze as her heart lurched painfully in her chest, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and fear. She lifted the photo with trembling fingers, studying the baby's soft features that looked exactly like the face she had imagined for 15 long years. The more she looked, the more impossible it became to deny. Serena's childhood eyes mirrored the same gentle spark she had always envisioned in her lost daughter. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she opened the drawer of Serena's small jewelry box, hoping she was wrong yet terrified that she was right. Inside, nestled between old hairbands and faded trinkets, was the matching bracelet engraved with Marissa Hale. The moment shattered her, sending her to her knees as tears spilled uncontrollably. It wasn't just sorrow anymore, it was hope that had been buried for too long, mixed with terror that the truth might slip away again. Marissa clutched both bracelets to her chest before mustering the courage to speak with Victor. She approached him quietly, heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear her own words. When she showed him the bracelet she had kept for 15 years, Victor fell silent, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. He finally admitted that Serena had been adopted at 5 months old, and the agency had never provided clear information about her biological family. The truth hit them both like a tidal wave, overwhelming and undeniable. Marissa's voice trembled as she said she believed Serena could be her daughter, and Victor's eyes softened with sympathy and urgency. After a long conversation, they agreed that a DNA test was the only way to know for certain. Victor made the arrangements immediately, doing everything he could to handle the process gently and respectfully. The waiting days felt like the longest stretch of time Marissa had ever endured. Every hour carried a new wave of hope, dread, longing, and fear, twisting her heart into knots that left her unable to sleep. Victor tried to reassure her, offering quiet company and warm tea, but nothing could calm the storm inside her. Serena, unaware of the emotional whirlwind, continued treating Marissa with kindness, which only made the ache deeper. Finally, the day of the results arrived, and Marissa's hands shook violently as she opened the envelope. The words were clear and undeniable. Marissa Hale was the biological mother of Serena Rowan. Her legs gave out, and she sobbed with a grief that finally found its healing. Serena, confused but instinctively moved, embraced her tightly, and something ancient and broken inside Marissa finally mended. The moment was raw and overflowing, a reunion built from years of longing and the fragile miracle of fate. Wrapped in each other's arms, mother and daughter discovered a love that had survived every separation. 2 weeks later, Marissa's life felt completely transformed in ways she never expected. She woke up each morning with a peace she hadn't felt in 15 years, a quiet certainty that her heart was finally whole again. Serena thrived in this new reality, radiating joy as she embraced the presence of her biological mother. At the same time, she continued to love Victor deeply, honoring the father who had raised her with unwavering tenderness. Marissa often watched the two of them together and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She knew that without Victor's kindness, Serena's life might have turned out very differently. One evening, Victor asked Marissa to take a walk with him through the garden behind the house. The sun was setting in gentle gold, casting long shadows as if blessing their new beginning. As they paused by the old oak tree, Victor turned to her with a sincerity that made her heart still. He told her he admired her strength, her compassion, and the love she carried even when life had tried to take everything from her. Then he confessed that he wanted her in his life not to complete the family, but because he had genuinely fallen in love with her. Marissa's breath caught as he quietly asked her to marry him, offering not just commitment but partnership built on healing and respect. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time the tears came from joy, not pain. She said yes with a trembling voice, knowing she wasn't just gaining a partner but reclaiming the future she thought she had lost forever. The story closes with a gentle image of the three of them walking together toward the warm light of the house. It is a picture of a family created not by perfect circumstances but by resilience, love, and courage to keep moving forward. The message is simple yet powerful. You may lose many things in life, but never lose faith in love or in your own ability to heal. A closed door may lead you to the very thing you've been searching for all along. Do you believe that lost love or broken bonds can be restored after many years? Invite viewers to comment, share their thoughts, and subscribe for more emotional English listening stories.